But first, am I one of the usual suspects or one of the some in the media that are critical of Anthony Albanese and his Foreign Minister Penny Wong and their handling of the alliance with the United States and their conflicting remarks around Gaza and Israel and their apparent lack of empathy at all for the Australian Jewish community? I hope so, because we're being led by a flaky, agenda-driven MP, the Prime Minister, who had to be dragged kicking and screaming away from lifetime views that he and Penny Wong have held about America and Israel. Hard-left university campaigners who have been pro-Palestine all their lives. I mean, listen to the Prime Minister with Kieran Gilbert on Sky today in a brief interview following Donald Trump's declaration of peace between Iran and Israel following Operation Midnight Hammer at the weekend. He started by denying he had been slow and flat-footed after the bunker bombing unleashed on Iran on Saturday morning our time.
The strikes, you backed them, but it did take a day. It's been called slow and flat-footed.
No,
Were you?
Only by the usual suspects, Kieran.
And of course he couldn't let it go. Minutes later, referring to some in the media.
And there are some in the media who have a criticism of anything that the Labor government does.
Me included, I hope. The Prime Minister, I think, has got quite the glass jaw, and he doesn't handle personal criticism of his style at all well, and he seems to be suggesting we ought to be behaving like the ABC and aiming our criticism at Donald Trump, not at him. I mean, he went on to defend himself by saying he'd been to the United States 5 times since becoming Prime Minister. Well, the only problem with that is he was meeting with Sleepy Joe Biden, and apart from a couple of phone calls, has had no relationship with Donald Trump at all. Well, does that matter? Hell, it does. Australia had an open embassy in Tehran on Saturday. Since then, it's been closed, but there was no pre-warning for Australia about Midnight Hammer happening, unlike the call that went into the UK and presumably Israel. We've now got 3,000 Australian citizens in Iran, which, by the way, seems like a hell of a lot to me, who want to get out, and another 1,000 or so in Israel, where now the shelling has started again. And the Prime Minister wants us to believe everything's hunky-dory between our most important and powerful ally, when clearly it is not. Now, after the embarrassing non-meeting at the G7 and the inability, clearly, of our diplomats to secure a sideline face-to-face at this week's NATO gathering, meaning instead that the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, is there, hoping to get a sit-down with the US President. I mean, does anybody, any serious person, anyone seriously think that that will happen, that Donald Trump will set aside time to talk not with our leader, but with his deputy at NATO? I might be wrong, and I'll admit it if I am, but surely that's not going to happen. Which brings me to our old mate Ambassador Kevin Rudd. He was a captain's pick by the Prime Minister to take on that job, following in the footsteps of successful Australian ambassadors to Washington, like Kim Beazley, Joe Hockey and Arthur Sinodinos. Now, if you measure the effectiveness of a diplomat in their ability to smooth a path toward a relationship between leaders, Rudd has been an absolute failure. He always talks the big talk, Kevin, but so far, I reckon he's been a dud.